If you bought an iPod Nano around 2008, you know, one of those tall ones, the chromatic multicolor scheme, you might have been convinced by Caroline Polachek. Hello, this is Matt O'Leary, and this is a review of the new Caroline Polachek album, Desire, I Want to Turn Into You. Caroline is a solo female experimental pop artist in a wave of this type of solo female experimental pop artists like Charli XCX and Rosalia, etc., etc., etc. While I'm generally not a huge fan of this glitzy hyperpop sound that's very popular now, you know, the most sugary form of modern pop, I opened myself to Caroline's music through the band Chairlift and specifically the album Moth from 2016. Moth is seriously one of the most unique and progressive pop albums I've heard in the last 10 years. The writing is just leagues above most of the indie pop pablum out there. You know, it's just banger after banger with tons of different intensities of songs and a lot of dance pop, but really all sorts of styles. And between Moth in 2016 and 2019, her first solo album, she worked with a lot of PC music artists and producers, which really infused her music with that hyper digital, hyper virtual sound that you get on 2019's Pang. And generally, again, I prefer a little bit more of an organic sound palette, instrumental palette, but Pang just had so many highlights and just kept growing on me and was so unforgettable. It really is an excellent album. Highlights like the deceptively simple key shifting New Normal, or these knockout vocal performances on slow burners like Insomnia or Parachute. And you can't forget about So Hot You're Hurting My Feelings, which boasted this devastatingly catchy 80s pop groove. And on this second album, Desire I Want to Turn Into You, Caroline's voice, her knack for melody and harmonies and interesting chord changes really glues together what's otherwise a ridiculously eclectic and scatterbrained production, which is pretty characteristic of this digital age where, you know, sounds from across the world are at your fingertips. And on this very big city, very glamorous American album, you'll hear just about everything from bagpipes to hammered dulcimer to, you know, the tabla or a children's choir or that tiny little chirp your smoke detector makes when it's low on battery. And that's not even a sliver of the digital instruments you'll hear on this thing. And at times it does feel like a little too much production tomfoolery, but it never leads to whiplash. Despite the constant sound play and experimentation, you're really tuned in to Caroline's voice above all. You know, it's pop, and this is about the pop star. It's really all meant to accentuate her. And it's also not a claustrophobic album. You know, you'd think with this hyper pop and an overeager producer and this voice that can do triple axels and occasionally scream, you'd think that all would be too much. But plenty of space is left in certain sections of these songs where the big moments, when they come around, feel really big. Like in the second verse of Smoke, where everything drops out and you just get this very minimal percussion and what sounds like an electric piano and Caroline's voice before the chorus hits again and this bass throbs in and you really feel that. The same kind of thing happens on Butterfly Net and to great effect. And Grimes features on the song Fly to You, which, you know, you just think, how's this gonna work? You got two artists who are trying to outdo each other's weirdness. Like, it's just going to be insanity. But refreshingly, it's not that. You know, it actually has this restraint, and it's one of the more subdued tracks here. And it's almost meditative with this very low-key break beat and these wholesome acoustic guitars and very feathery vocals. Fly to You started as one of my least favorite tracks, and it's just trudged its way up the hill. Same goes for Bunny as a Rider, which just felt too sugary, way too, you know, immediate on first listen. But then textures just revealed themselves and the vocal lines, you know, the cadence of everything just kind of worked its way into my head like a good pop track should. And most of the songs lyrically are fantasy driven and not like trolls or elves, but fantasy in the sense that they're these character sketches that are based on, you know, idealized or unattainable archetypes. You know, Bunny as a Rider is kind of seems to be about this very cool, elusive woman, you know, full of mystique. And the song Sunset makes this kind of cliche metaphor about a lover being a sunset. That cliche, though, feels very intentional. It feels very self-aware. You know, she's leaning into the fiction and taking these characters all the way to their extremes. It's very clever stuff. You know, Sunset is the most cliche and kind of straightforward lyric, but it's also the most simple and straightforward song. You got 4 chords and a verse melody that follows the opening flamenco guitar line. And for me, and I think many people, that escapism, that fantasy is one of, if not the fundamental allure of pop music. You can learn more about humanity by exploring its fictional extremes, its best and its worst actors. Another important theme that seems to run through Caroline's music is public vulnerability. You think of a song like Crying in Public or this album cover, which features her bedraggled on the subway. Blood and Butter is another highlight for me. This vocal I just get swept up in. And really, it's her voice that's her differentiator. I hear the smoothness and the phrasing of Enya, but also the adventurousness of Kate Bush. She sounds classically trained, and I think she is, but also very much in touch with the titans, the heroes of experimental pop. And I don't mean to be so hyperbolic, but her voice is a gift from God. There's no other way to put it. I would love to hear her find a producer that can simplify the sound palette a little bit, you know, just kind of strip things back. I'd love to hear like just a piano and Caroline's voice album. She could still do all the crazy vocal runs and all the natural auto-tune that she does, but it would just be less hyperactive with the production and maybe draw all that much more contrast with her voice, which would make it stand out more. But that's really more of a personal preference than it is a critique. Polachek is an incredibly smart and talented musician. Her ability to write a melody and arrange a song is on full display again on this thing. And seriously, her chord progressions, her melodies are so odd for a pure pop artist. And all these things that I've talked about really set her apart in a very saturated alternative pop market. This is a solid 8 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, Pang just gets like a slight edge, I think, but who knows? You know, it's only been like less than a week. If you like this review, please do like and leave a comment below with some of your favorite tracks from the album. You know, there's so much to talk about with this record, so I'd love to discuss. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you so much for watching.